Sometimes the person who means the most to you is the one you know the least about. She stays hidden, her name remains a mystery, and yet somehow her presence has already captured your imagination. So you ask yourself, why does she stay in the shadows? Why won't she reveal herself? What is the real reason this mystery woman remains hidden? Maybe the answer isn't what you think. Bombed. Maybe she isn't hiding because she has nothing to say. Vent. Maybe she's hiding because some hearts have learned that not everyone deserves access to them. Man, there are people who have been misunderstood so many times that silence begins to feel safer than explanation. People who once opened their hearts too quickly and discovered that honesty can be used against them. People who gave their trust to the wrong person and spent years learning how to rebuild what someone else carelessly broke. And perhaps she is one of those people. Perhaps behind the mystery is not arrogance, and perhaps behind the distance is not rejection. Melander, perhaps behind the silence is a story you haven't earned the right to hear yet. Ban, that's something we often forget. We see someone who seems distant, immediately create a story about them. We assume they're cold, we assume they're uninterested, we assume they're playing games. But we rarely stop to ask a more compassionate question: what happened to them before I arrived? Found, maybe she once trusted someone who made promises they never intended to keep. Maybe she loved someone who only appreciated her after she left. Maybe she gave her time, her loyalty, her energy, and her heart to someone who treated all of it as if it could easily be replaced. And then so now, when someone new approaches, she doesn't rush, she watches, she listens. Manjaro, she pays attention to the small things, because words no longer impress her as easily as they once did. Fan, she wants to see consistency. She wants to know whether your actions still match your promises when nobody is watching. Landens, she wants to know who you are when life doesn't go your way. Blend, she wants to know whether you're kind, only when you're happy. Bindish, she wants to know whether you respect boundaries you don't understand. She wants to know whether you can handle a heart that isn't immediately placed into your hands. And perhaps that is the real reason she stays hidden. Not because she's afraid of love, vengeance, because she has finally learned the value of protecting herself. Mand, there is a difference between being closed off and being careful. A closed heart has stopped believing. The careful heart still believes, but it has learned not to hand itself over to the first person who says the right words. And maybe she has learned something else too. Attention is not the same as intention. Vend, someone can text you every day and still have no intention of building a future with you. Land, someone can call you beautiful and still fail to treat you with respect. Someone can make you feel wanted and still disappear when responsibility arrives. So perhaps this mystery woman is no longer impressed by how strongly someone says they feel. Perhaps she is watching how consistently they show up, because real love is not a performance. It is a pattern. Plend, it is the way someone speaks to you when they're frustrated. Blance, it is the way they treat people who can do nothing for them. Land, it is whether they remember the promises they made when the excitement has faded. Gend, it is whether their care remains when love stops feeling like a movie and starts becoming a responsibility. Maybe she stays hidden because she knows how quickly people can become fascinated by an idea of someone without ever taking the time to know the real person. And maybe she's tired of being admired without being understood. That's one of the loneliest experiences in the world. Malins, to have people notice your face but never ask about your fears. Bands, to have people compliment your appearance but never care about your dreams. Bands, to have people want your attention but never protect your peace. So she remains a mystery because deep down, she wants someone who is patient enough to discover her slowly. To be, and not someone who demands access, not someone who becomes angry because she has boundaries. Then not someone who says if you really cared, you would prove it. But someone who understands that trust cannot be demanded, it can only be built, one honest conversation at a time. One kept promise at a time, one act of respect at a time, one moment of patience at a time. And maybe you are standing there wondering why she won't let you closer. Maybe you're asking, what do I have to do to make her trust me? The answer may be simpler than you expect. Don't try to force the door open. Become the reason she no longer feels the need to lock it. Think about that. Then you cannot argue someone into feeling safe. You cannot pressure someone into trusting you. You cannot rush a heart into believing that this time will be different. Safety is not created through speeches. Then it is created through experience. When you say you'll call and you call. Jen, it's when you promise to be honest and the truth becomes uncomfortable, but you remain honest anyway. And when she tells you something vulnerable and you don't use it against her later. Lean when she says no and you respect it without punishment. Melandis. When she needs time and you don't turn her need for space into an accusation. That's how trust begins. And quietly, slowly, almost invisibly, and then one day you realize something beautiful has changed. Then the woman who once guarded every word is telling you about her childhood. Man's the woman who once kept her feelings hidden, is admitting when she's afraid. Mun, the woman who once seemed distant, is laughing freely around you, not because you forced her to change, but because your presence gave her permission to feel safe, and perhaps that's what love is supposed to do. Does not demand that someone remove their armor immediately, Malines, but create an environment where they no longer need to wear it all the time. Commands. But there is another reason the mystery woman may stay hidden. Maybe she hasn't fully found herself yet. Maybe she knows that love can be beautiful, but she also knows how dangerous it can become when you lose yourself trying to keep someone else. Maybe she has spent years becoming the person everyone needed her to be, the strong one, the helpful one, and the understanding one, the one who never complains, the one who keeps everyone else comfortable. And now she's finally learning to ask herself a question she should have asked a long time ago. Man, what do I need? Not what does everyone expect from me? Not how can I make someone else stay? Yeah. And not what version of myself will people like the most? What do I actually need to become happy? That journey can make a person quiet because self-discovery often happens away from the noise. Man, you can't always hear your own heart when everyone else is telling you who to be. So perhaps she stays hidden because she is rebuilding a relationship with herself. And if that's true, then loving her means respecting that journey. Clean. It means understanding that your desire to know her doesn't automatically give you the right to interrupt her healing. It means recognizing that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is give someone room to breathe. We often think love means moving closer, but sometimes love means knowing when not to push. Lean, sometimes it means saying, I would like to know you, but I will not force you. Ray, sometimes it means being patient enough to let someone arrive in their own time. That is because the best connections aren't created by pressure, they're created by permission, and maybe that's what makes her mysterious. She isn't giving everyone access to the deepest parts of herself. Then she's waiting to see who will be patient enough to deserve them. Oh, man. But here's the truth that can be difficult to accept. Her mystery may have nothing to do with you. Chlians, not everything someone hides is a message meant for you to decode. MBDA, not every silence is an invitation to chase harder. Not every distance means you're supposed to prove your worth. Vain, sometimes another person's distance is simply part of their own journey. And maturity means learning the difference between pursuing someone and respecting them. Blands, you can care deeply about a person without trying to possess them. Hones, you can be curious about their story without believing you are entitled to every chapter. Melans, you can hope they choose you while still respecting their right to choose something else. I love the control. That is affection without entitlement. And maybe if she ever does step out of the shadows, it won't be because you solved the mystery. And it will be because she decided in her own time that she was ready to be seen. Maybe she is ready to be seen, but only by someone who knows how to look beyond the surface. Blaine, because being seen is not the same as being watched. Beale's people can watch you every day and still know nothing about you. They can see your photographs, hear your voice, know your name, and still never understand what you carry inside your heart. Long to be truly seen means someone notices when your smile is hiding exhaustion. Then it means someone hears the pause in your voice and asks, are you really okay? And it means someone remembers the things you said months ago because they mattered enough to listen. And maybe that is what she has been waiting for all along. Not someone who wants to expose her, someone who wants to understand her. There is a strange pressure in the modern world to reveal everything. People believe every thought should be shared, every relationship should be displayed, every happy moment should be proven, and every private part of life should somehow become public. But not everything beautiful needs an audience. Some things grow better in silence. Lund, some relationships become stronger when they are protected from unnecessary noise. Lan, some feelings are too real to be turned into entertainment. Perhaps the mystery woman understands that. Mom, perhaps she knows that privacy is not secrecy. There is a difference. Secrecy is hiding because of deception. Emily's privacy is protecting something because it has value. A person can remain private and still be completely honest. Means a person can choose not to show the world everything and still be deeply sincere. And maybe she has discovered that the more precious something becomes, the more carefully you protect it. Think about the thing and think about the things that truly matter in your life, your peace, your family, your deepest dreams, your greatest fears. It means you don't give those things to everyone you meet. You protect them, not because you're ashamed, because they're valuable. So maybe this woman stays hidden because she has learned that her life doesn't need public approval to be real. She doesn't need everyone to know who she is. She doesn't need strangers to understand her choices. She doesn't need constant attention to prove that she matters. Belines, and there is something incredibly powerful about a person who can live without needing to be constantly seen. Because when someone knows their worth, they stop begging the world to confirm it. Maybe that's why she remains mysterious. She isn't trying to make everyone curious. She's simply living her life without making herself available for everyone's opinion. And perhaps that is exactly what makes her presence so fascinating. But here's where we have to be careful. Mystery can easily become obsession. When we don't know someone, our minds often begin creating a version of them. We fill the empty spaces with our own imagination. We turn silence into romance, distance into destiny, a few beautiful moments into an entire love story that may never have actually existed. And sometimes the person we're chasing isn't the person who is really there. We're chasing the version we invented. That's why real love requires patience. You have to let someone reveal themselves over time. And you have to be willing to discover that the person behind the mystery may be different from the person you imagined. Maybe she's stronger than you expected. Maybe she's more complicated. Maybe she's quieter. Maybe she's funnier. Maybe she's carrying pain you never knew existed. Maybe she isn't meant for you at all. And you have to be mature enough to accept that possibility too. Because love is not about forcing reality to match your fantasy. It's about having the courage to meet reality with an open heart. So if you're wondering why the mystery woman stays hidden, perhaps the first question shouldn't be, how can I make her reveal herself? Perhaps the better question is, if she ever does, will I be ready to know the truth? Will you still care if her story isn't perfect? Will you still respect her if she has boundaries? Will you still admire her if she doesn't become the person you imagined? Will you know how to love a real woman, or are you only attracted to the mystery? Because the mystery eventually fades. Every relationship reaches the point where curiosity becomes familiarity. You learn the habits, you learn the moods, you learn the fears, and the fears. You learn what makes them angry, what makes them laugh, and what makes them feel loved. And that's where real love begins, not when you're trying to uncover who someone is, but when you finally know who they are and still choose to stay. Chubin Sainjin, that is a love much deeper than fascination, and maybe she knows that. Maybe she's been loved before for the mystery she created, but not for the person she truly was. Maybe people were fascinated until they saw her flaws, interested until she needed patience, attracted until she had an opinion. Captivated until she became human, and now she waits, not for someone who will chase the mystery, but for someone who can handle the truth, because every person is eventually revealed. The smile is followed by a difficult day, the confidence is followed by insecurity, the strength is followed by exhaustion, the calmness is followed by fear. And the person who truly loves you doesn't disappear when they finally discover that you are human. Shrant, they come closer, they listen, they learn, they say, you don't have to pretend with me. A bunch. Imagine how powerful it would be for someone who has spent years hiding parts of themselves to finally hear those words. I mean, you don't have to pretend with me. Maybe that's what she needs. Not another person asking, why are you hiding? But someone quietly showing, you are safe when you are ready. Amanda, there is a difference between demanding access and earning trust. Demanding access says, tell me everything. Unearning trust says, I'll still be here when you're ready. Demanding access says, prove that you care. MDO earning trust says, I'll show you through my actions that you can care safely. Demanding access says, why don't you trust me? Learning trust says, I understand trust takes time. And the truth is some of the strongest relationships begin slowly, not with dramatic promises, not with instant declarations, not with inept declarations. And is Jane's, but with two people gradually realizing that neither one has to perform, they can simply be themselves. Perhaps the mystery woman stays hidden because she is tired of performing. Maybe she's tired of pretending everything is fine when it isn't. Maybe she's tired of becoming whoever people expect her to become. Maybe she's tired of explaining why she needs time. Maybe she just wants someone who sees her humanity before they see her mystery. And if you truly care about her, then perhaps the greatest thing you can do is stop trying to solve her like a puzzle. People are not puzzles, they are stories, and stories need time. You don't open a book, read 3 pages, and demand to know why you don't understand the ending. You keep reading, you pay attention, you allow the story to unfold. Maybe that's what loving her requires. Patience, respect, consistency, the willingness to accept that some parts of her may never belong to you. Because even in the deepest love, two people remain individuals. Love is not the destruction of identity. It is the decision to share a life without demanding ownership of every part of another person's soul. And when you understand that, you stop chasing, you start becoming fun, you stop asking, how can I make her choose me? You start asking, am I becoming someone capable of loving her well? That question changes everything. Because you cannot control whether she opens her heart. But you can control the kind of person you are when she stands in front of you. You can become more honest, more patient, more emotionally mature, more capable of listening, more comfortable with boundaries, and more willing to accept not yet. And sometimes that is exactly what makes a hidden heart feel safe enough to come closer. Not pressure, not obsession. Not grand speeches, character, because character speaks even when you're silent. It is revealed in how you react when you don't get what you want. It is revealed in whether you remain respectful when someone chooses distance. It is revealed in whether you can care for someone without demanding something in return. That is where attraction becomes love, and perhaps the mystery woman stays hidden because she is waiting for a love that does not try to capture her. A love that knows how to walk beside her. A love that doesn't need to expose her to prove that she exists. A love that understands that sometimes the most beautiful things in life are not hidden because they are weak. They are protected because they are precious. And maybe when she finally decides to step out of the shadows, you will discover that the real reason she stayed hidden was never because she wanted to remain a mystery forever. She was simply waiting to discover whether the world was safe enough to let her be known. She was simply waiting to discover whether the world was safe enough to let her be known. And maybe that is the truth we miss when we become obsessed with the mystery. We think the question is, why won't she show herself? But perhaps the real question is, what has life taught her about being seen? Because every person who protects their heart has a reason, even if they never explain it to you. Some people were laughed at when they were vulnerable. Some were abandoned when they needed love the most. Some trusted people who made them regret it. Some spent years being judged for things others never understood. And some simply discovered that peace is easier to protect when not everyone knows every detail of your life. And so the mystery woman stays hidden, not necessarily because she is running, maybe she is resting, maybe she is healing, that maybe she is growing. Maybe she is finally learning that she doesn't have to make herself available to everyone who becomes curious about her. And there is something deeply powerful about that. Have been taught to chase answers, to solve every mystery, deemed to demand explanations, but not every unanswered question is ours to solve. And sometimes maturity is knowing when to stop knocking on a door that hasn't been opened for you. Not because you don't care, because you respect the person on the other side. That doesn't mean you stop believing in connection. Jorlands, it means you stop confusing love with possession. Langers, you can want someone in your life without believing they owe you access to theirs. Lands, you can care about someone deeply without demanding that they reveal every hidden part of themselves. And perhaps that is the kind of love she has been waiting for, all along. BND, a love that says, I am interested in knowing you, but I will not force you to become visible before you're ready. A love that says, your boundaries don't offend me, a love that says, your privacy doesn't automatically make you suspicious. A love that says, I don't need to own every part of you to appreciate the part of you that you choose to share. Beings, that is rare, and rare things often take time. Jews. Think about how many people enter relationships trying to win as quickly as possible. They want answers immediately, commitment immediately, trust immediately. Manjins, they want to skip the slow process of becoming strangers who gradually turn into friends, friends who gradually become important, and important people who eventually become part of each other's lives. But there is beauty in slow love. There is beauty in not knowing everything yet. There is beauty in allowing a person to surprise you. Maybe the mystery isn't a problem. Maybe it's an invitation to become more patient, because patience reveals what pressure never can. Jane, you can pressure someone into answering, but you cannot pressure them into trusting. You can convince someone to stay for a moment, but you cannot force them to feel safe. You can demand honesty, but if someone is afraid of your reaction, their honesty will never be complete. Then real connection has to be freely given. And that is why if she ever chooses to let you closer, you should never treat that moment as something you conquered. And trust is not a prize you win, it is a gift someone gives. And the moment you understand that, you begin to handle hearts differently. You stop asking, what can I get from this person? You start asking, what kind of presence am I becoming in this person's life? Do you bring peace or pressure? And Leanne, do you bring honesty or confusion? Do you make someone feel heard or constantly judged? Jen, do your words create safety, or does every conversation feel like a test they are afraid to fail? Means those questions matter, because perhaps the mystery woman isn't looking for the loudest person. Maybe she isn't waiting for the most charming speech. Blamed, maybe she isn't impressed by someone who knows exactly what to say. Vain, maybe she is watching for the person who knows exactly how to behave, the person whose actions remain consistent. The person who respects her when they are disappointed. The person who doesn't become cruel when they don't get their way. The person who understands that love without respect is not love at all. And perhaps one day, after watching you long enough, she will begin to understand something about you too. Feline, maybe she will notice that you don't rush her, and maybe she will notice that you don't punish her for needing time. Maybe she will notice that you are the same person when things are exciting and when things become ordinary. And slowly, without some dramatic announcement, the walls may begin to come down, not all at once. And trust rarely happens that way. Maybe one day she tells you something personal. Another day she lets you see her sadness. Another day she laughs so freely that you realize she has forgotten to protect herself for a moment. And then one day you look at her and understand that the mystery is disappearing. Not because you forced her to reveal herself, because she chose to. That choice changes everything. Because the greatest relationships are not built by one person chasing while the other person constantly runs. Tam, they are built when two people eventually meet in the middle. One brings patience, the other brings trust. Dublin, one brings consistency, the other brings vulnerability. One says, you are safe with them. Then the other finally says, then let me show you who I really am. And that may be the beginning of the most beautiful part of the story. Man, because behind the mystery, you may discover an ordinary human being. Someone with fears, someone with flaws, someone who sometimes doubts herself, someone who sometimes needs reassurance, and someone who can be strong for everyone else but secretly wishes someone would ask whether she is tired. And when you finally discover that, I hope you don't become disappointed. I hope you become grateful, because the real person is always more valuable than the fantasy. Men, the woman behind the mystery may not always be mysterious. She may become familiar. Man, you'll learn what makes her laugh. You'll learn when she's pretending to be okay. You'll learn the stories that make her emotional. Then you'll learn the dreams she is afraid to say out loud. And the more, the less she becomes a mystery and the more she becomes someone real. Xiuan Lunju, that is where the deepest love begins. Not when you're fascinated by what you don't know, Jensja, but when you finally know the truth and still feel grateful that the person trusted you enough to show it. So maybe the real reason the mystery woman stays hidden is not one simple answer. Maybe it's 1,000 small reasons, a past she doesn't want to relive, Memja Sem choosing to Minja, a heart she doesn't want to hand to the wrong person, a peace she has worked too hard to recover, means a life she doesn't feel obligated to explain. A lesson she learned when she was younger, a dream she is still protecting, or perhaps she simply understands something that many people spend years trying to learn. Not everyone deserves access to you, and that isn't cold, that isn't selfish, that isn't cruel. Maingen, sometimes it is wisdom. You do not have to explain your boundaries to every person who dislikes them. Palendier, you do not have to become visible just because someone demands answers. Then you do not have to sacrifice your peace to satisfy another person's curiosity. And if someone truly cares about you, they will understand that, maybe not immediately, but eventually, because real love learns the difference between wanting to know someone and feeling entitled to them, and perhaps that is the final lesson hidden inside this mystery. The right person will not try to drag you out of the shadows. They will become a place where you no longer feel afraid of the light. They won't demand that you trust them. They'll live in a way that makes trust possible. Lemdi, they won't ask you to destroy every wall overnight. They'll understand why the walls were built. Then they won't make you ashamed of your caution. They'll prove that caution and love can exist together. And maybe one day, after all the silence, all the uncertainty, all the questions, the mystery woman will finally look at the person standing before her and realize that she doesn't have to keep hiding from someone who never tried to control her. Tamban, she can breathe, she can speak, she can laugh, she can be imperfect, she can tell the truth. Then she can finally be seen. And perhaps the person who truly loves her will not celebrate because they finally uncovered the mystery. They will celebrate because she no longer feels the need to hide, because that is what love should do. Not expose, not control, not demand. Love should protect, love should listen, love should wait. Then love should create a place where two people can remove their masks without fear of being rejected. So if you are wondering about the mystery woman, don't let curiosity turn into obsession. Don't let attraction become entitlement. Don't mistake her privacy for a challenge you have to conquer. Yes. Instead, become someone whose character speaks louder than your desire to know her. Be patient. Be honest. Be respectful. Be consistent, and if she is ever meant to walk into your life, let her do it freely. Lanes, because the most beautiful thing about someone opening their heart isn't that you finally discovered how to unlock it. Belenjas, it's knowing they looked at you, after everything life had taught them to fear, and decided, I feel safe enough to stop hiding, and when that happens, don't ask what finally convinced her. Just remember what the mystery was teaching you all along. Mengs. The greatest love is not the one that forces a hidden heart to reveal itself. Blends, the greatest love is the one that becomes so patient, so honest, so gentle, and so safe that one day, without being asked, that heart simply steps forward, and says, "This is who I really am." And in that moment, you may finally understand the real reason she stayed hidden. Ben, she wasn't waiting for someone to discover her. Malem, she was waiting for a love that would make being discovered feel safe.